nay, and then read aloud his comments, perhaps.
Yes, and what P&Z did too, and I think that was a great practice. So if y'all are okay with carrying it on, say your name and say aye, or say your name and say nay. That makes it easier for the record, and we can go through, if we need to, we can go through each individual person if that's helpful as well, just so that Susan A has it all and B, everything is recorded properly.
Great.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are you set up on your end, Susan?
I am. I'm ready to go.
Okay. Let's go ahead and call the City Council meeting to order. It is 6:07. We do have a full quorum in attendance via Zoom. With that, TJ Wilkerson, would you give the invitation, please?
Lord, we come tonight with humble hearts and bowed heads. Lord, we come thanking you for all that you've done. We thank you for keeping us safe. We pray for the families that are going through this tragedy and to continue the world. Watch over us, Lord, as we do our best to understand and bring closure to this that we're going through. Give us strength and endurance. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right, the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Texas flag.
Honor the
Texas flag.
I pledge
allegiance to thee, Texas,
one
one
state
nation,
under God,
one
indivisible.
Okay. We didn't receive anything in the citizens forum. However, comments, and I do have a comment. I'd like to recognize and thank Mike Muckleroy for taking a proactive approach during the storms last week. Mike went out on his own and checked the city, and we actually had a drainage ditch that was being backed up, and he got in the ditch and removed the debris. So Mike, thank you again. You are the ideal and perfect person for this spot, and your efforts are appreciated. So thank you so much. Right, moving forward, the consent agenda. Number 1, matters related to approval of minutes of the March 10th, 2020 public hearing and regular meeting on March 23rd, 2020, special emergency meeting. Number 2, consideration of possible action regarding authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement to accept donation of real property and donation deed on behalf of the city property of TxDOT for right-hand turn lane at the southeast corner of the intersection of South SH 105 and FM 149. You can take these, you're all together. What is your pleasure, council?
I'm good with both of them, although I find it ironic that now they're finally getting into action for TxDOT in the middle of a crisis. They finally have time to accept some free property.
All right, all this is in the consent agenda.
Both items.
These items.
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Second.
So John Champagne moved, and I heard Rebecca Huss and TJ Wilkerson.
I will defer to TJ.
TJ Wilkerson as a second. This motion is debatable. Amendment requires majority vote. All of those in favor, please state your name and aye. We'll start with John Champagne. John Champagne is an aye.
Rebecca Huss is an aye.
Aye. TJ.
Tom Cronin, give me a thumbs up if you're an aye. There you go. Thumbs up from Tom Cronin. Okay, TJ said aye. All those opposed say nay. The motion carries. We accept the consent agenda as presented. Okay. Third item of business on your agenda, consideration of possible action. Number 3, city administrator to update the city council on items related to the COVID-19 disaster declaration. Richard.
All right, thank you. I don't have any action recommendations this time, but I did want to give the council a general update on some of the measures that have taken place at City Hall or with city departments to be able to function at this time. Starting at City Hall in general, we initially were providing hand sanitizer before we limited City Hall to no general public access, which is where we are now. We're conducting primary business through telephone, email, Dropbox paperwork, if necessary through regular mail. The public entry to City Hall has been closed except if there's a specific need for a contractor or for public access on an appointment basis. We've expanded the use of teleconference, obviously, for meetings such as this and P&Z, and we're starting to use that for collaborative work efforts, like with the engineer and multiple departments. We've begun the application process, which has been received by FEMA for any of the expenses that we may go through that ultimately become reimbursable by the federal government. All city employees that would like have been provided with a face mask for their use, either within City Hall or out and about through the community. Initially, temporary masks were distributed. Some have used their own cloth masks that were provided. Yesterday received from Montgomery Quilt Company a supply of masks to cover everyone at City Hall. So I want to mention that they provided that at no charge to the city. And later this week, we're planning to have through teleconference, the final CDBG hearing on the MLK and Baja project. That's a staff and a consultant-led item. With Public Works, they've been split into single person crews to avoid staff being in the same truck together. Where multiple crew members are needed at one location, they'll arrive in separate vehicles. And the police department has graciously loaned one of their vehicles so that we can maintain the single man crews with Public Works. Where they do have some time that has been reduced in some areas of Public Works, they're using this to catch up on maintenance items. And of course, as we all know, maintenance deferred too long results in other problems. So those are good things to get caught up on. One thing that they did take care of in the last week was reclaiming a large run of sidewalk that had been overgrown along 105. And so I don't recall the exact pricing, but obviously that was a significant amount of concrete were we to have to put that down brand new. They're getting daily park checks done, and as requested in the county order, the park equipment itself has been closed off for where children would climb and such, but the open spaces at the park remain open. And in the court dates for April and May have been reassigned into later this summer because of the restrictions on gathering in groups. And they're making greater efforts to work with the public via telephone, email, through the on-site Dropbox for paperwork. And one of the collections companies, that's maybe collection company is the wrong term. One of the companies used for collecting the payments for court electronically is lowering some of their fees in this time because they're getting to allow increased payment for customer use through that portal. The police department probably has the most difficult job finding the balance between public safety and public health. They're continuing to do their patrols with officers using their discretion on when to initiate the traffic stops. They're working to take reports by phone where possible and appropriate to limit contact with the public directly unless it's necessary. And they're beginning to limit their responses to accidents to ones with potential or actual injuries and advising for the exchange of information with non-injury accidents. One thing that I have that's relevant, it's not COVID-19 related specifically, but I wanted to make sure this got passed along to council, is that since the early March council meeting, the comptroller's office determined the city of Montgomery shouldn't have been paid certain sales taxes late last summer. And those are being taken out of the April and March payments. So I had a discussion with our on-site bookkeeper today. we'll be transferring that money over that was previously set aside in text pool back into the operating fund account, in place of that amount. The March payment was entirely zeroed out, by that amount that we were, I guess, advanced inadvertently. The April payment later this month will be approximately $2,700. So when we receive that, we're effectively caught up from the state.
What was the other amount? About the same?
Well, the total was approximately, going from memory, the total early payment was about 370, I think in the 370, 380,000 range. So 217,000 would have been the March amount received. And so the balance of that was above the 217,000 carried over into what will be the April payment. And so that left about $2,700 overage that was still due to the city. So there will be no deduction, come the month of May and beyond, from that money.
I'm sorry, Richard. What was the total amount sent back to the state?
That was the amount from HEB, and that was in the 370, 380,000 range. I don't have that figure in front of me.
So we sent back $370,000 to the state?
No, sir. That is the amount that we received back last September, and we set aside in the text pool because the state comptroller's office didn't understand that we'd been overpaid.
Right.
And so it finally caught up to us, and so they just sent us zero for the month of March,
Right.
and they will send us almost nothing for the month of February. Effectively, they're taking that money back that they gave us early. Since we had put that money into text pool, we're going to slide that money back from text pool into the main operating account. So it will look to us as if we received that money normally because we didn't go out and spend the money that we received in error.
I was going to say, thank goodness that we never spent that money and never counted it as ours, because this is the exact wrong month to have zero in sales tax dollars. It's very nice to have been so prudent with that money and to have had it as a payable to somebody else all this time.
Yeah, I would have preferred it had gotten longer that we'd held on to it, obviously, but we also will get a small, but I think a couple $1,000s worth of interest along the way. So we get that working for us.
We've held on to it for about, what, 7 months or so? It was late last
September, I think, is when the payment was. So that was what, the 9th month, and we're in 4. Yeah, I think 7 months is it.
But when this used to happen to us, John, I'm sure you remember 4 or 5 years ago, it was incredibly painful when they would reverse this back out because we had already spent that money and we did not have the gap in our budget to be able to afford losing the sales tax that they were withholding. So this is given everything that's going on now and the size of the withholding, this is a very strange place to be given both of those situations.
So, yeah, right. Richard, you and I spoke to you earlier today. I'm wondering, what's your anticipated shortfall in, well, it's not a shortfall, but yeah, what's your anticipated shortfall in revenue due to lack of sales? I know it's a wild guess, but.
Yeah, and Rick, that's all I can give you is a wild guess. I wouldn't be surprised if we're, if the month of, I guess the month of May's payment for 2020 compared to the month of May's payment for 2019, which reflects the April business primarily for those months, is down by as much as 50 to 70%.
Yeah. So without naming individuals, which industry or which category of economic activity, be it restaurants, food, whatever, grocery, is the source of our revenue sales tax, would you say?
You mean for what we
internet? Is it not? Isn't it web purchases? I think.
Are you talking in a normal economy or what?
A normal economy. Yeah.
Our single largest sales taxpayers are, some of the largest include the grocery stores, hardware stores, McCoy's, Jim's Hardware, Kroger's, a couple of the larger restaurants. But when you get past those top ones, telecommunications and networking do reflect a fairly sizable amount of the tax revenue we receive, when you start getting to the second tier there.
Mm.
And so that is not an insignificant amount of money. So there are elements there that may buffer us. For instance, it's been observed by several. There's a lot of people over at at floral and garden shops because the people are at home and working. McCoy's does have a decent amount of business while people aren't going into the store. People are working on their homes and at their homes. So
Jim's totally busted. I mean, he's busy every day.
So it'll definitely be a report I'm looking forward to seeing, just so we can see how different the month of April turned out to be.
I'm personally not as worried about our short term, although we have a couple of strange payers, there's like the crane or heavy equipment operator that's actually a big sales tax payer. That one will probably fall off pretty quickly. But I think maybe next fiscal year is going to be painful for us, where all of the stuff where everyone's home and investing in themselves, but it's really the knock-on effect of small businesses and jobs, and how much of the long-term effect of this short-term trauma, what that ends up being. I think the next year is really where we've got trouble.
Well,
because obviously Brookshire Brothers and Kroger have been doing quite well since nobody's going to Conroe to eat, nobody's going to the Woodlands to eat.
well, the problem we're having now, and I would say for the better part of all of April and some of March, in prior conversation, Richard, all of our people are being utilized the way they've been when things were running normally, correct?
Well, there have been some changes in how we're operating, but by and large through City Hall, staff is working on the things they've been working on. A lot of it is just being done differently. For instance, with the utility office, the one-on-one direct public contact isn't there, but they're getting the phone calls, people are paying online, people are dropping payments off. So the communication in some ways is similar. It's just happening in a different method.
Well, I would assume all of the department heads are looking at their activity, and the necessity of being fully manned is being evaluated, because the hard conversation is depending on how much longer this lasts, and depending on every business that I talk with and interact with. I just got off the phone with one, furloughing, laying off left and right. I think we need to be very mindful of the fact that our revenue is going to be affected, and we need to be as smart as we can be utilization of our personnel.
Yeah, that's definitely high on my mind. We certainly have the reserves to get through at least 6 and probably more months, of normal operation, but we shouldn't be relying on our reserves, and we can't rely on them in the long run to draw down. They'll get us through tough periods, but if in the long run, revenue is a permanent shortfall, we'll have to find ways to adapt and make that work.
And I think also as we've grown, I mean, the city top line has grown a lot, but personnel has not followed that for the most part. So, every investment in a person that we've made, it's been justified by the productivity and activity that we basically transferred from third-party activity to doing it in-house. So it's not been a function of, oh, we've got $1 million more on the top line. It's been more that, okay, we're taking this expense that we've already got, and we've now got the functionality to do, or capability to do that function in-house.
Yeah, but there's always a downside to that, which is obvious. With the third-party individual that's not being utilized, you just stop using them. And the fact is, our largest expenditure is personnel. And I'm not saying anything needs to be done. What I am saying that every department head and our city administrator, I'm sure, is evaluating the necessity of being at full throttle with personnel. And I just leave it. I'll leave it.
True, but the underlying infrastructure, like for public works, is the same size. You know, you've still got the same amount of stuff running through the system. And if you looked at what was on Facebook, that lovely picture yesterday, you've actually got more stuff that involves more maintenance and more activity rather than less, ironically.
Again, I leave that microcosm or micromanagement to the people we've got in charge. But I can just say this: in a regular business, when revenue is down, a corresponding reduction in expenses is always looked upon, and we're not exempt from that.
We aren't, although, you know, you can argue from a management perspective, from not a micromanaging part, but from a top line part, if you can take care of people, you've got a loyal workforce that works harder, more productively through the downside and through the upside, and you get more out of people through the cycle than you do from laying people off when times get tough because they don't care about your business at all. Instead, you get people, if you take care of them, they'll be, you know, you have your top guy up to his neck in a ditch, you know, when something needs to be done on, you know, a side of town that nobody's driven to in a couple days because he knows that something has to be done. And he does it because that he loves his job, he loves his town, not because it's his paycheck.
That's not unique to the city.
It's not, but it's unique to employers that take care of their employees.
You sound like you're in the 60s. All I'm saying is it's just a rudimentary part of running a business. And I'm not proposing anything. I'm just saying the department heads we have in place, chief of police, is something they need to be aware of. And I'm sure they are. I'm just bringing it up because if this insanity continues in terms of economic shutdown, it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse.
Yeah, well, I can tell you, each department head is, you know, keenly aware of the difficulties of the situation, and you know, those things will be evaluated as we move forward. And hopefully, this is a small blip on the radar. But if it becomes a much larger one, you know, we will deal with those as we get to them. But they will be dealt with.
Listen, I have full confidence in our people. I think we have the best people that, well, for sure, that we've ever had in the city. What I might disagree with is this is not a small blip. The lag time to get this thing up and going is going to be appreciable. This economic problem, in my estimation, is going to be much bigger than the viral problem. And what has occurred with businesses in this city and the surrounding area is, I think it's going to be catastrophic. I hope I'm wrong, but I think it's so. For what it's worth, one man's opinion. Other than that, happy days.
All right. Well, that was all I had for you as the way of the update for the agenda item, and I had no action requested.
Okay. Well, then we can move on to the council inquiry, and I had something kind of prepared just to talk about there that's in line with this as well. On the subject of moving forward and what does that look like? You know, I don't think we've never seen this before in this capacity. So I don't know what the future holds, but I want to make sure that we have a plan in place to protect our small businesses and be that resource for them. I'm assuming that MEDC, Frida, is taking in all of the grant opportunities and federal and state money opportunities to help our business owners. the chamber's doing a wonderful job. And if y'all know of anybody, the chamber can, I've got the emails and the information. I'll be more than happy to share that. But also I think it's the city's responsibility to do that. When our small businesses call in and look for help, I think we need to have that information. I think from what I have seen, we're still providing great service to our residents and our businesses. And I think we should take that blueprint forward, but I think we should ask for feedback from our businesses and from our residents. If there is a gap in service or if there's any feedback, Richard, I think that we should put it out there and ask for that feedback to be given. So this virus is something that I've been hearing that, yes, maybe we get over that summer hump, but we could potentially see this again if there is another outbreak, say in the fall. And how do we've got this blueprint, how do we administer that? And how do we be prepared for that? You know, this looks like it could potentially be our new normal instead of going back to what normal was a month ago. And so if we do come back to this new normal, we have a plan A, plan B. For one, and I think City Hall had this problem too, but with Consolidated and Suddenlink, I was down for 5 days, you know, and I work from home as well. And so strengthening our relationships with those communication and telecom companies, that we have direct communication with them instead of our residents trying to communicate with them to get service back up and running. I know it taxed them with having schools and business continuity going over lines that were not used to getting that much traffic. But those are some relationships I think that we need to ensure that we strengthen. And like we did with Entergy, that's been extremely helpful moving forward. But how are our residents that are less tech savvy? You know, I don't know if you've received any feedback from them. I've been reaching out to quite a few that I know that may not have the capabilities or the, you know, I can always go to City Hall. I want to make sure City Hall has for them and the feedback and our small businesses. I mean, they are the lifeline of our city. If there's grants available, if there's help available, the SBA loans, if there's local funds, let's be that resource to get them up and going. We need our city to be stronger than this virus, I guess, if you will. And I know that we took a hit, but how are we going to get back on our feet and do that in a quick manner and provide those services? So something just to think about and to talk about, and how we can forge relationships on all those levels of funding, as well as continuity and services.
Okay, I've jotted some notes down from what you said, and I'll be looking into some of those. I mean, can say, and I do agree certainly, that the sooner businesses are up and running, that's a big help to the city, not just to the residents, but also to the city's bottom line, because that's how we get the bulk of our revenues through those taxes. But the services and those products being available to the public is what a lot of the people will need. Mm-hmm. And so for some, there have been a couple that have contacted us, and we've been trying to put them in touch with the chamber, the SBA, the banks that are involved with those directly. If there's services that we can discover that we can help provide directly ourselves, we certainly will make that effort to do that. Okay.
And is GrantWorks making any additional programs available for business owners?
We haven't been notified of any yet. I expect there to be something coming down the road. I think it's a little early for them to have anything that's rolling out, but we do have a conversation coming up I think it's Thursday afternoon with GrantWorks, and I'll make a point to touch base with them on that. So if they see something and have something coming, they know to contact us, because we would be interested in that.
Definitely, if there's some sort of thing that that we can do in partnership with businesses, that even if we have to spend some money to help our businesses, or there are grants available, like a not revenue sharing, but 80-20 split or something like that, that's something that we could look at. And they've already done all the demographic surveys, so hopefully that would give us a benefit, or ready to go on something more quickly.
It's just our work. Yeah, so a lot of our tax base comes from the Krogers and the McCoys and those big corporations, but our downtown is crucial and critical to our livelihood and how we can help those businesses. And I think You know, Tom, I've seen what you've done with delivery, and I mean, those are the things that we have to shift, right? But still try to be successful in doing business in a different manner. And it's kind of separate, having a meeting via Zoom for business continuity for the city. These are all things that it's kind of the new normal, or the new way we're having to move. And should there be a secondary outbreak or a third outbreak or whatever, what do we've learned and what can we take forward, and how can we continue to thrive in a different manner, is all I'm saying. And I want to make sure that we have City Hall, when someone, a business owner or a resident calls City Hall, that they can get answers and be provided with information.
Well,
I think
you know,
Sarah's right. I'd like to see the city be more aggressive with delivering services, or
Like-
proactive anyway, in reaching out to people, you know, not just this, because obviously from the participants list, not that many people want to listen to us, but there may be things that, you know, we can reach out to people via this type of platform that they are interested in. So, you know, we can think of things and be more proactive about getting in touch with people and delivering services, you know, whatever this new norm is, that, you know, they can feel like we're providing value for their taxpayer dollar, that we're doing things for them. You know, maybe it's meetings with Mike, maybe it's, you know, Dave on the Vespa showing them what's happening in the city or something like that, you know, the GoPro kind of thing. Whatever it is, what are we doing for them so that they see us in action, even if they can't come to City Hall to see us?
Okay, I'm trying to get my head around what exactly, other than communication, and maybe somebody that has to be taught how to get an SBA loan, what can the city do?
That's what I'm talking about, having those resources, the communication. We should be able, I would love to have Richard be able to pick up the phone and call the customer service manager at Suddenly and Comcast or Consolidated and say, hey, can you get us up and running? Because the services were down for days here, and it was up to our residents. But at city, so a leader in the city to be able to have a direct contact, like we've done with Entergy. You haven't been part of those meetings, but I'll tell you, we've got a lifeline with Energy to get things where it became a priority pretty quickly.
That should be SOP. I mean, that's nothing new.
Or maybe talking to people.
It's not there.
Or maybe if somebody wants to have a deck on the back of their house, how does that work now? I mean, you know, they want to invest in their property, which would be good for property values, but they don't even know where to even know what to do. They don't know, you know, we've had obviously things where people build something, they move a shed in, they don't know that they're not supposed to, or that they need to do permitting or this and that. I mean, if people can't go to City Hall, or, you know, they don't know what to do, we need to deliver services to people in a way that they find easier to deal with than they have in the past. We need to, exactly. How is the question? So if this is our new normal, how do we reach people?
We're the greatest communication era of the history of mankind. And you're going to try to think of a new way to do it? I mean, I'm sorry.
Well,
I'll tell you this. Richard better be taking care of what he needs to be taken care of. I don't know who we're going to get to provide these services that are going to be individualized or whatever. I don't know what you have in mind, but we have internet, we have phones, we've got social media. What else? How else?
No,
And
we
I don't
didn't
know
have
if I just
internet. That was the problem. We didn't have internet. And so that was to have that relationship. I'm just asking us to go build those relationships with those two companies.
Yeah.
So that we have a lifeline to get something done quicker than 6 days. Now, granted, I know all the telecommunications were overloaded, but it was.
And there's a bunch of people laid off too, by the way.
Sorry?
A bunch of people were laid off. So the response time on a lot of services are going to be delayed.
Well, and school started up, and there's a myriad of issues. I'm just saying, if we could have that leadership position, the phone call way to say, hey, as a city, we're down, or we're having some issues. Can we get? Otherwise, it was up to the residents to have to call in. And I don't know if you called in suddenly, but it was a nightmare.
It was down for what, 2 days? I don't know.
No, it was down for like 5 days.
Well, not mine.
Okay. So that's all I'm asking is, let's have those for business continuity. It would help, because if say businesses were open, John, or I don't know, Tom, if you had a problem with running credit cards, because that is on a Wi-Fi, and they're, you know, our small businesses that were still open could not run credit cards.
Well, I don't know what the city can do, but other
Well,
than the
but
fact
we can
that-
make a call. I'm not saying the city gives the company, the small business money. What I'm saying is have that relationship with Suddenlink and consolidated to make a call and say, hey, we need some help, and jump in front of the lines versus calling the tech support line and
Yeah.
trying to get through that. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
All
Just
right.
like we did with Entergy.
Yeah. All in.
I can tell.
Hey,
But
listen, all I'm saying is there's individual effort that has to be made. I agree with you. If the city can do something, great. But people, we can't hold everybody's hand. And if the internet's down, get off your can and get it going. So I don't know what else to say. All I do know is the toilets better flush, the water better flow, the roads better be repaired, and the city better be protected. After that, it's land yap for me.
anything else for the council inquiry? I will entertain a motion to adjourn if there's nothing else.
So moved.
You moved to adjourn, Becky? Do we
I
have a
do.
second?
I'll second.
Sir,
All right, John Champagne seconded. We adjourned this meeting. It is all in favor, say aye, or Tom, give a thumbs up. Well, I think Tom left.
Aye.
aye.
Okay. All right. It is 6:43 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for setting it up, Steph. I appreciate you guys going outside the box to make it happen.
We'll do what we need to make it work.
But don't work too hard because obviously, you shouldn't be holding my hand.